still not using these cards, so we are qualifying. So Jelena is our next speaker from the SA, and she's going to talk about norm exposure situations across European countries. 25 minutes for your talk, whenever you're ready. Next.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Estela, for introduction. So I will be the last one, but I promise to keep the time and to present you an overview of impacts and of different norm situations across European countries, including work on development of holistic methodology for multiple hazard exposure situations, something that we have heard. So why 25 minutes? I have to justify a bit, because the task 2.5 in radon norm consisted of one part where we investigated this overview of norm and norm in different activities from, I will here focus on energy production sectors and mineral processing industries, while the second part of the task 2.5 was about investigating the norm characterization of norm multiple contaminant situation in order to move step forward towards holistic development of integrated and holistic approach for the impact and risk assessment. And of course, we have tried to connect this to Sustainable Development Goals of United Nations. So what was done in this task was to collect and to improve the general knowledge about type and characteristics of norm industrial sites that are based on the indicative list that is given in both EU BSS, but also IAEA BSS, but also wider than that, because during our work we realized that many countries have also additional activities to be included in consideration when we talk about norm. So we also try to find and to characterize, to identify and to characterize norm legacy sites. We met some obstacles there, but I will talk a bit more later. But in general, for all these exposure situations that we identified in different European countries, and the task had really many participants from different European countries, we have analyzed or tried to collect as many as possible qualitative and quantitative data about all the different norm materials. Those can be in raw materials, then from main products, residues, until liquid and gas discharge. And then we also try to see what processes in these activities, in these practices, can lead to accumulation, but also to further transport and exposure assessment at facilities, but also wider in the environment. Through all these steps, of course, were analyzed in different norm exposure scenarios for both workers and members of public, and we also tried to collect it as many as possible from different countries, estimated effective doses for both categories, and also for biota where it was available. So to provide a very, this is for the part that I already said, we developed methodology for identification of norm exposure situations, and we provided tools in form of norm registers to collect information about norm sites in one harmonized and consistent way. And these are presented in details in two published peer review papers that can be found on radon norm sites. But because we were very early realized that maybe we will not cover with this updated knowledge the situation of whole Europe, we wanted to include also countries that were not participants of radon norm task 2.5 or were not participants at all in radon norm project. So we made one survey, electronic survey, that was in 2022 distributed to all European countries. and we received additional responses. It was a very comprehensive survey developed in 3 categories for regulators, for industry operators, and for operators in for waste managers, and also for experts. And I will not again talk too much because already my presentation is big enough, but if you're interested to see more in details about results from this e-survey, it's also available as a peer review paper and available on the Radon Norm website. But one figure from this paper showing the overview of norm industries, all different activities that we mapped in different European countries. And as you can see, first, cement production and maintenance of clinker ovens, oil and gas production, coal-fired power plants, and production of phosphate fertilizers and groundwater filtration facilities are those that are with abundance index higher than 0.7. It means that they are present in majority, first 3 almost in all countries, but also the additional 2 that I mentioned almost in more than half of the countries that are investigated. But if you see the number of countries having these industries decrease from the left to the right, but still we have all these different activities, and we have, as I said, a bit wider list than the one presented by EU BSS and wider by international IAEA basic safety standards. After this work, we focused on data that we collected by from Radon Norm participants by tools that I mentioned as developed. And we decided, because we got really high quantity of very different data. When we talk about quantitative data, data was received in form of maximum, minimal value, a range of values, median or average value, and it was done by purpose to allow collecting as much as possible information. But on another side, and we got it, but on another side, it a bit make problematic to do statistical analysis and direct comparison from country to country or from industry to industry. But we somehow try to do our best to compare and to put them in some groups to be able to focus on the process in these industries from the beginning, from raw materials until, as you can see here, for the energy production sectors, for coal, oil and gas and geothermal power plants. We started from raw materials and finished analysis with liquid and gas discharges. And we checked all the different aspects from legislative frameworks, how these situations are controlled, regulatory practice and approaches in different countries, and we checked different exposure scenarios, how these are characterized, what kind of doses, the level of doses, but also what kind of models are used, and finally, what mitigation and remediation actions can be used for particular sites. And it's maybe not, I'm not sure the resolution is good, but it's written that this should be helpful in not only status overview, but in sharing best practices, new knowledge, in helping in modeling and risk estimation. It will hopefully give evidence-based recommendation and informed risk, help to inform risk communication and also risk prevention. But finally, we also think that our data will support national entities in implementation of EU BSS, since we have seen very different heterogeneous status for the norm regulation in European countries. When it comes to these 3 energy production sectors, or energy production sectors where norm can be an issue, for oil and gas, the main characteristic was large quantities of produced water with not so high concentration of naturally occurring radionuclides, but also occurrence of sludge scale in pipelines and in equipment that can be present in lower quantities commonly, but can have really high norm concentrations. Coal combustion, no norm accumulation was found in coal ash and flue dust, But this was not of some concern because the levels were quite low. The same was also for geothermal energy, so we identified that the main dose contributors were radionuclides of radium, of 210 lead and 210 polonium, but we didn't identify really high doses neither for workers nor for public living in the vicinity or in different exposure scenarios that were considered. For example, one of the exposure scenario, or two in this case, that were considered for coal power plants and oil and gas. You can see, I will not explain the whole figure, but just with these red arrows, the exposure scenarios and transport directions are marked, while exposure pathways to humans of these radionuclides are marked with green. So the main exposure pathways are from ingestion, inhalation, of course, external radiation, and inhalation of radon only in some cases. But if we want to have a really accurate and precise value for public exposure, in each exposure scenarios for different, now we have here presented for coal power plant and oil and gas production, but this should be done for all different norm exposure situations to be sure that we have covered all the different specific situations. And we have prepared a paper on this, and it's under revision currently 2 months, so I hope that something will come soon. And then the next part is norm in mineral processing industries. We have in the same way, from the beginning till the end, compared phosphoric acid production, phosphate and potassium fertilizers production, cement industry, zirconium industry, and titanium dioxide production. It is a huge job, really. It's a lot of data, and different groups have worked, and then we compiled all the work. We have found out that the norm can become concentrated in waste streams, and tried to see where exactly, in what kind of residues and waste, and what kind of doses and regulatory challenges can be mapped. But although we have seen accumulation of some radionuclides, mainly radium, lead and polonium isotopes, application of occupational health and safety measures really diminish doses to the workers, so it's not of main concern in these mineral processing industries. Of course, it doesn't exclude the necessity to have radiation protection measures in these industries, because it's not necessary to have monitoring program, to have everything in place. But when we evaluated exposure scenarios, we found low or controlled doses to workers and public, and as I said, environmental discharge was monitored. But what was challenging is that impact and risk assessment was really missing, or people across European countries are, because it's not a direct obligation from EU BSS, it's a bit, the results are a bit strange because the countries are not consistent in how they do risk and impact assessment. To connect norm and sustainable development goals, we can connect them with four of these directly. Workers in norm activities, workers can be exposed and also public occasionally. There are also some environmental risks, but required actions to implement RP programs, health monitoring, and of course it's very important to have education and training for workers and community. Then for the sustainable goal 9 on industry and innovation, infrastructure that we have seen in norm industries may deteriorate due to corrosion and require expensive decontamination, but we should then look for innovative design and safer technology, and we should have infrastructure good enough to ensure safe handling and disposal. That is something to be as a main message as a main message to European Commission, because this is still very questionable from country to country. Then life on land, the improper disposal of non-contaminated waste can contaminate soil and then harm biodiversity, agriculture. So we need to have in place good waste control to prevent ecosystem exposure to radionuclides, and also to have proper procedures for land remediation. So when we summarize all these three, we can also say that strengthening international cooperation, sharing best practices and technologies, training between countries will all lead to helping many countries, not so many maybe in Europe, but many countries across the world that still lack technical expertise or regulatory capacity to manage norm risks. Then we have norm-affected legacy sites. We have different definitions of legacies, but it's clear that this is long-term risk to human health, ecosystem, and sustainable development. We have mapped abandoned uranium, phosphate mine, all the rare earth or thorium processing facilities, disused coal-fired power stations, red mud storage areas, phosphogypsum stacks, and here you can see the different radionuclides that can persist in soil, tailings, water, and with environmental media. What is important message is that no clear characterization procedure for legacy sites, while multiple exposure situations like this are present in Europe still. So it means that further work on this is definitely necessary, and to be able to come to remediation, as it's always complex decision making. One paper on this is in preparation, and together with the task 5.5, while I forgot to say, on mineral, norm in mineral industries, we have two papers that are ready to be submitted in June. And how to connect with the sustainable goals? Well, you can see that health risks, because contaminated groundwater at legacy sites, in some cases inhalation of radioactive dust or radon, then this can be often with no assigned responsibility, so unmarked or repurposed industrial zones. Regarding life on land, environmental impact, soil and vegetation contamination, bioaccumulation, so remediation is crucial. And again, we have collaboration. It's important to talk about this. It's important to talk about legacy sites that are affected by norm, because usually when European countries talk about remediation of some old legacy sites, that's somehow missed from other contaminants, because commonly this is a mix of different contaminants. Radionuclides are not of big concern, so this must be changed. The second part, I don't know how much time I have.
8 minutes.
Okay, it's good. So the second part, this one was more on investigation and collection of qualitative and quantitative data, while this is part of post-doc investigation of norm in context of multiple hazard exposure scenarios. And the idea was to do the better characterization of one multiple exposures site, to be able to provide further, to support further steps towards integrated assessment procedure development. So from the hazards, we have naturally occurring radionuclides, rare earth elements, and heavy metals. But we also have a range of environmental parameters and conditions. We tried on the right part, you can see all listed. And we try to contribute to the scientific knowledge considering interactions at two levels. First, hazards interconnection in the environment, and then impact in different organisms that we identified at these sites. So this is the FAN complex that my colleague from BSA in the beginning of this block presented, very rich in thorium, rich in uranium and consequently progeny, radon, thoron, but also it's very rich in rare earth elements, and it's medium rich in heavy metals. But as you can see, thorium and 228 radium up to 6,000 becquerel per kilo, uranium lower, but still higher than Norwegian soil and concentration in EU countries. And the same is observed for, as I said, rare earth elements and for some of the metals, not all, but you will see here. So, giving these figures, really not my point to explain on the figures, nor to read all the text that we put here, but in this FAN complex we had the different subsites that are marked with different colors, and try to analyze the abundance of different bedrocks and state of their mineralization, and then to connect the levels of elements or hazards, concentration levels, to different bedrocks in mineralization state, and also to some anthropogenic intervention, because as you could hear, we had iron mining site and ferroniobium production, mining and production site in this same complex. As it's already obvious on these small figures, there is large variabilities within sampling locations for both radioactive elements, but also for rare earth elements and for metals, extended local heterogeneity in bedrock composition, and also significant variability in topographical features and soil properties. So, from something that we thought in the beginning will be easy task to find the concentrations and then to correlate between them with environmental parameters, we ended with something that was not very easy to understand or to correlate. So real-world measurement data set, and it was very interesting for me to hear the previous presentations, because I see how we can learn from each other and maybe try to use the data and to better understand this real-world measurement data set, because we used, as it is given here, tailored and customized statistical methods, but simply the complexity of the environmental system made it very difficult for us to understand and to adequately capture the resulting independencies or interconnections. So certain relationships and single factor dependencies are aligned with the prior expectations, like dependence on pH. But when we consider all the rest of the information that we got, it was sometimes a kind of mess, because it was not possible to clearly understand. Then we included sequential extraction using a set of extraction solvents with increasing the level of power, to see where we have this, what is the mobility and bioavailability of these elements. And of course, as expected, also we compared the sites where we had previous human activities with the site that is Tushnes on the right, where we didn't have this mining. So, just to avoid the reading, we have this bedrock and soil properties very inconsistently and very much different, and simultaneous effects of these additional impacts, high variability in soil properties resulting in heterogeneous binding potential, and then other prevailing environmental conditions like hazards. Yes. So all this somehow, in a very complex way, influence the final situation. So we are still in assessment and still in communication and in discussion. I will skip this. This is about arsenic and zinc, and again very complex and not completely clear for us in the relationship, and go on key messages. So, for the first part of the presentation on norm exposure sites in general, we can say that we have good understanding of legislation across European countries, but different graded approaches are developed. Overall, it is satisfying also when we consider United Nations Sustainable Goals. Main things are that norm control is still not a new issue. So, although I said that in general we have these approaches for regulatory control, we still need better understanding. We still have in some countries necessity of more work, because they have lack of resources, human resources, other type of lack of methodology. Now we provided some, so we hope the situation will be better. We identified different radionuclide accumulated in the materials, but luckily exposure doses lower than 1 millisievert, mainly due to occupational health and safety measures. But when we were willing to collect information on the environment, that was very scarce, almost nothing, because European countries unfortunately still have very anthropocentric and not holistic approach in consideration of norm and radionuclides. The issue is norm waste and residues, capacity for disposal, for recycling, for reuse, something that we will continue, as I understand, to work, and also modeling and dose assessment. It is clear for researchers what should be done, but not so clear for industry operators and for regulators. So it must be somehow made better connection between these two groups to make some models that are friendly for the daily use or something like that. And communication of radiation protection requirement is very important. For the second part, and this is my last slide, environmental systems are inherently complex with multiple mechanisms and interactions that act simultaneously. So in the real life conditions where site-specific combination of hazards and conditions may result in patterns limited to those specific environmental settings, it's very different, it's very difficult to understand and to completely accurately explain the situation. Hazard concentrations also can vary widely, and then they exhibit unexpected or even anomalous behavior that is strongly governed by multiple factors acting in combination. So with this, I will finish talk, and I would like really to, in the end, to acknowledge all Radon Norm Task 2.5 participants, and there are many of them, so I didn't put the names, but all who contributed to this work from the beginning till the end. Thank you so much. Also, I would like to thank to Dorothea Jakab from this Hungarian EK institution that is on research stay in Norway. She helped a lot with this second part of presentation. And also to join Sarah's word for the Laureline, who has always been very supportive and helping with all the things that we faced during this 5 years journey. So thank you for your attention today.